songs. So thank you so much, Bill and Bob and Rob. And sending Reverend Liz much love as she's on her cruise and a well-deserved break. And I pray that when she comes back replenished and all sparkly and feeling great, it's just perfect. And honestly, that's why I'm here. So I'm Reverend Kamatara, and I lived in Albuquerque for quite a while. I just moved to Las Cruces, so I help out in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Las Cruces, because ministers need breaks. And I'm so grateful when my partner and I showed up this morning at 9:45, just to make sure we're solid. Honestly, this community, do y'all know how awesome you are? I'm just saying, there's like a rack of volunteers. To see all the volunteers that were here at 45 minutes, if not earlier, getting set up, preparing the space, doing the work. Like, yes, Reverend Liz, we will do that. Like, coming together, thank you. That's amazing. And all different people helping out. So I just want to honor what a beautiful thing y'all got going on here, and I'm so grateful to share it with you this morning. So as a substitute minister throughout the state of New Mexico, sometimes I get told what the topic is, and sometimes I get to decide. And with Centers for Spiritual Living, if some of you get the Science of Mind magazine, you know there's like a theme of the month. And okay, so I'm on it whenever I'm speaking at different CSLs. And last month it was really interesting because the topic was about going deep and to plumb the depths and recognize that inside of ourselves lives the multitude and the mystery. And it's like, yeah, that's really true. Like, that's important to look at. In fact, a quote from Ernest Holmes, who is kind of the kissing cousins, Science of Mind is like kissing cousins to unity. On the family tree, they're like, whoo, all from the Emma Curtis Hopkins branch of New Thought. So we're kindred spirits here. But Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, wrote in The Science of Mind, if you're playing along at home, page 31, no human has ever plumbed the depths of either the conscious or the subjective life. In both directions, we reach out to infinity. Since we cannot encompass infinity, we shall always be expanding and always enlarging our capacity to know and experience. I love that image of always expanding into infinity. It's like the little T-Rex with the extension arms. Just keep going. Yes, thank you. I saw some of you doing the little thing. Love it. So yeah, like we keep going, and going deep is important. Like we know that there's something more going on here, or we wouldn't be in the spiritual community. But also, I couldn't help but push back a little bit, and maybe, that's just who I am, question everything, push back a little bit. Because even spiritual practices, as Ram Dass reminded us quite often, can be a trap just as much. When is it ever enough? When is it ever enough? Especially when you're infinite beings. Ooh, how do we get a grip on that? So on a spiritual path, going deep matters, and at the same time, I want to be aware of some of the pitfalls of going deep. And I don't want to dismiss the whole range of being human, because God is in all of it, no matter what depth level we're at. If there's no separation, if we truly believe that God is all there is, then God is in all of it. So, might we discern the proper depth level for the moment? And then we can respond appropriately to what's at hand and still have the whole range of the human divine experience, and to really live from a place of wholeness, not this or that. Oh, I'm being spiritual. I'm deep. Or that's so shallow. Well, now wait a minute. Hold on. So today, I really want to explore kind of the opposite of what we usually talk about in spiritual communities. Let's look at some of the traps we might hit when we go deep, and let's look at some of the joys of being in the shallow. And then, as our Buddhist friends would say, could we find that middle way of seeing the divine in it all? So first off, starting off with some of the traps, I think one trap that a lot of people hit in their spiritual journey, and it may depend how many years in you are, or and maybe how many obstacles are in your way. I mean, there's a lot of variables here, but one of the things that I've experienced in my own life is that in going deep, there are quite a few deep imposters. And maybe you've met some of these. Maybe you've been some of these. I know some of these resonate with me. We've got the jet skier. We've got the performer. We've got the competitor. And then we've got the acquirer, that all happen when folks are in the new thought realm, when they're being spiritual. And I know it's when people are profiling as deep, and then I'll say I may even think that I am, but really, So the jet skier is the person who just stays on the surface. But it sure is exciting because there's a whole new world and I'm learning all these new words and I've got all these new things and look at all these cool people and these bright, shiny objects, and I'm just gonna jet ski on the surface because that's where I want to stay. And that leads right into the next imposter, the deep imposter. When I think I'm being deep, but maybe not, is the performer. Because I'm in the club, and I know all the right words to say, so I'm going to be able to parrot back all the things, like, it's all good, it's all God. Oh my gosh, when I'm in a time of crisis, if someone said that to me, I think I might injure them. So, having the time and place or understanding, like, not just empty platitudes. When people say change your thinking, change your life, that is not for the faint of heart. So there's a lot of folks that, and I absolutely was one of them when I first learned all the buzzwords, buzzword bingo, woo-hoo-hoo, and I could sling it, but I also couldn't take it. And it wasn't getting in, although that was the next step in my journey. So I'm not dismissing that either. Like, I had to learn and I had to get the new words and the new relationships and see, like, there is a surface level here. Oh, wait, there's a little something more. So then I got into being the performer. And then I have to admit, when it comes to that performer, it's like when the poo hits the fan and the chips are down, just to mix my metaphors, that's a veneer. Woo! There's nothing to hold on to. So it does, you can't handle, there's no infrastructure built to handle whatever's going on. And then, of course, we have the lovely competitor. I have taken more classes than you. I'm further in my evolution than that person. Oh, that person hasn't woken up yet. I feel so bad for them. Gosh, I have done that with my own family. I have. Oh, they're still in victimhood. Well, yes, but can I have a heart of compassion, not judgment for that? I am not bitter just because I may happen to have a different view of what's going on. It's just different. And some people, as that competitor, they want to have the certificate and the title and the this and the that. They're competing at new thought, which, yes, kind of goes counter to the whole oneness and we are all connected and we're in this together and we lift each other up. Yes, it does not work, but it happens. I have definitely had that experience. And the acquirer, the person who's got to get to that next retreat and that next mountaintop experience and that next, big Deepak Chopra retreat and Greg Braden that's in Colorado and we're going to go. And those things are great. I'm not saying they're not, because we can learn a lot from those and it's really important. But if we're just in this endless hamster wheel of the next spiritual high, that's a trap too. At what point is it enough? At what point do we learn and move on and make forward progress? We're not just looping. And maybe you've had that experience, or maybe you have a friend who's just looping. Okay, and you got to hear Reverend Martha Quintana a few weeks ago. She was my mentor at the Rio Grande Center for Spiritual Living, and she always used to tease me, but also provoke me and be like, okay, Reverend Kamatara, how uncomfortable do you need to be before you make a different choice? Oh, apparently that uncomfortable. Wow, I have an amazing threshold, I'm just saying. So there could be some of the deep imposters. Do I think that I've got it when actually, there's so much more. It's infinite. It's not just like on Google Maps, you have arrived. No, like there's no there because you're here in infinity. And of course, wherever you go, thank you. So there's no place to arrive. You can't collect enough. You can't, it'll never happen. So when is it enough to be here and in it and experiencing it? And I think one of the most devastating traps that happens for people who are on a spiritual path is that oftentimes we equate our depth as our worth. That's really hard. So now we are going deep, but we're not deep enough. It's not good enough. As spiritual seekers, it may seem like only profound insights or mystical experiences or emotional breakthroughs are valid expressions of our spiritual path. We may feel really guilty or inadequate if we're not going deep. Have you ever compared yourself to someone else? Like, oh, the way that person prays is so good, I could never do that. Or the way that person speaks, or the way that person sings, or like, oh, they're so good. As opposed to wherever you are in that moment, which is here by divine appointment, your whole life is led up to this moment. In this divine, beautiful, masterful weaving that could only be you. And so, does everything have to be deep? Is going deep the only way, as if like joy, humor, simplicity are somehow less sacred, less than? In fact, I was a mentor teacher in my first career. I was teaching teachers how to teach. And I had a young teacher who was really struggling with communications and just never, yes, there's no teacher who ever has enough time. I was working 60 hours a week. I got that. But you kind of got to get a grip on some of the key things. Okay, what's going on with your email? And he was like, well, I don't know. I spend like an hour to a day doing this. And I'm like, emails? No. You need to have 4 settings, and you probably already have this. There's the don't care setting, delete. There's the I can answer this in 30 seconds or less, out the door, very simple. There's the medium setting, like, well, I need to think about this for a moment. It might take 5 minutes to do that email. And then there's the one where you're like, maybe 2 or 3 of the emails are like, oh, that's really hard. I might need to take that to discernment. You know what? That's a phone call. I can't even send an email back. Okay, great. But it's not all of them are that. How do you find your response setting? Not everything on earth is deep and hard and profound. And I think sometimes as spiritual seekers, we feel like it's invalid unless it's hard. Why can't it be easy? That's just as valid of an experience, that it could be easy and simple and beautiful and joyful, and it all just works out. Wouldn't that be awesome? I wouldn't mind having a little more of that right now in my life. And I think sometimes what happens is that our Puritan work ethic, that if you're not miserable and working yourself to the bone, you're doing it wrong, meets new thought. Ooh, that does not go well. And then we even might take it so far in our new thought communities to get into toxic introspection. Isn't that wild to say that in the same sentence? Toxic introspection? But it's like exercising too much or drinking too much water, or you can have too much of a good thing where, we get down and dirty in the mud underneath the lotus flower and we never come up for air. just to breathe. Take a moment. Oh, my sweet heavenly word, precious pumpkin, you're fine. Take it easy. Because the bottom line is, spiritual life isn't lived only in the depths. It's just as much in the laughter over coffee and the errands that we run and the lightness that we can carry in the quiet, ordinary moments that just make up our days. It's in the social hall just as much as it's in the sanctuary. And to not dismiss those other things. And even Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity along with Myrtle, says, it is the childlike mind that finds the kingdom. Jesus had his sentences about that too, with a child's mind. And in Buddhism, the beginner mind, there's something to be said for sheer simplicity. And the shallow waters, they have their own beauty and necessity too. Wouldn't it be nice to just float sometimes? To just float. That would be great. And in those shallow waters, we're allowed to breathe. We're allowed to rest. We're allowed to play. And this is a big one that sometimes spiritual people skip, we're allowed to integrate what we've discovered in the depths. It's important to have time in between that deep, profound mountaintop experience or class or retreat. Take some time. Could you just process what happened here? Don't just, next, and I'm on to the next. Whoa, slow it down. Slow it down. Take it easy, because there's something to be said for being in the shallows and being in the simplicity and being in the simple beauty. And on the flip side, conversely, staying only in the shallows and playing in the shallow end of the pool. I know that's where the fun toys are, but sometimes that keeps us spiritually malnourished. Like we avoid the deeper questions of the purpose and the pain that we actually need to face so it can stop hurting. You have to lance the boil so it can heal. We're like, nope, just leave it. I'm just going to ignore it. It's going to go away. And I used to laugh and talk about how practitioner training and ministerial training is like a piñata bat to your beehive in the corner. You know, the one that you've been ignoring for a while, you're like, it'll go away on its own. And every season they come back. And then our spiritual work is that piñata bat that goes, pop, 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 pop. You're like, oh God, okay, I'm going to deal with this now. I am going to face this. Because we don't want to disconnect or disassociate, to use the new psychology terms that we have here that I'm just learning now. We don't want to disconnect from the powerful work we do need to do and the transformation that is possible when we go beneath the surface. And that's where we are building the infrastructure, so it's not just a veneer. So we're not just a tumbleweed the first time a big gust comes by and then woo, and then we're looping in crisis or looping in victimhood. No. We've actually built the infrastructure that has, now we've got deep roots. And we can handle it when something big does go down, because it's gonna. It's part of being human and alive. But now we've got a spiritual community to support us. We've got our spiritual practices. We've got things in place. So when something happens, we can flex and flow and handle it. And it really centers us to weather the storm. But rather than swinging between extremes, right? Because we've just gone, shallow to deep, and deep to shallow, and shallow to deep. Whoa. Okay, hold on. What if we find that gentle hammock that's just swinging gently right in the middle, that middle way? Could we just learn how to move with ease and grace through the whole spectrum of what life is presenting us? Have you ever been in a gradient pool or a lake? I grew up with lakes. I grew up in Wisconsin. I saw the Minnesota plates. I know someone else has grown up with lakes. It starts at 0 depth, and then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper as you go. And that's kind of nice, because then you get to decide how deep or how shallow are you in the moment. You're not just thrown into the deep end. You just get to decide, where do I want to be? Okay, how do we do that spiritually? How do we find the right depth level for the moment that we're in? and really honoring the rhythms of deep diving when we're called to do that, and floating freely when it's the time and place for that, when it serves our soul. So I really want to emphasize that the middle way doesn't mean being lukewarm or half-hearted or just diluting the experience. It's more about discernment and being in alignment with the divine, and again, finding that balance. Because that way we can walk our path with awareness and compassion for ourselves and for others, and we can know that all of it is divine. The divine meets us just as fully in the deep as in the shallow. It is all God. In fact, Evelyn Underhill writes, "The mystical life is not a special way of life. It is simply life lived to the fullest." So finding that middle way, can we discern the right depth to meet the moment? Because remember, God wastes nothing. All of it is used. It all comes together to be that perfect journey of divine right order for us. Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor says, "Mysticism begins not in transcendence, but in immanence." So think about the word immanence and what that means. She says, "in seeing the sacred in the everyday." So really, the challenge for this week, can we honor the simple, fun, shallow things just as much as the deep, and then recognizing the divine in every single moment? Can we be aware of the situation and respond with the appropriate depth level without falling into any of the traps of any of the imposters, of any of my self-worth, and some of the things our storyteller says, like, whoa, take it down a few levels, find that middle way to the divine in the fullness of life, to live from a place of wholeness. So I'm going to end with a quote from Ernest Holmes, kind of pulls it all together for me. He says, "We must learn to live by inspiration." That means that we should let the spiritual depths of our being flow through our conversations and into our acts. Living by inspiration does not mean living chaotically. Our whole purpose is to make the intellect an instrument for spirit. We must become artists in living. To live by inspiration means to sense the divine touch in everything, to enter into the spirit of things, and to truly experience the joy of living. I hope you experience that this week. Namaste.